The alien fleet hovered ominously above the human colony, their ships gleaming with technological superiority. This wasn't the first time the Galactic Coalition had expanded its borders through intimidation, and the tactic had never failed. Their commander, a towering reptilian being with iridescent scales, stood on the bridge of the flagship, watching the planet below with a smug expression. "They surrendered already?" the commander asked, barely able to contain his laughter. His second-in-command, a smaller insected creature, nodded. "Within an hour of our ultimatum. No resistance, no tricks. Just compliance." The commander shook his head in mock pity. "Humans. A young, naive species. They think their submission earns mercy." On the surface, the colony was silent. Streets were empty, shops shuttered, and the occasional breeze swept through the otherwise lifeless settlement. The colonists had gathered in the central square, surrounded by coalition soldiers. These beings, from various galactic species, moved with casual arrogance, weapons slung loosely as if the very idea of danger was laughable. An alien soldier leaned down to a human child hiding behind her mother. He offered her a strange, glowing fruit with an overly toothy grin. She shrank back. "See?" he sneered. "Even their children are weak. They don't belong out here." The mother didn't respond, her lips pressed into a thin line, her eyes darting to the massive ships blotting out the sky. Somewhere deep down, she hoped Earth would intervene, though she couldn't imagine how. Back on Earth, the news had spread like wildfire. The colony's surrender and the coalition's triumphant broadcast ignited debates across every corner of the planet. Commentators speculated on humanity's place in the galaxy, some condemning the colony's quick capitulation as cowardice, others insisting survival was the smarter choice against overwhelming odds. But in a secure room within the United Nations Space Corps' headquarters, the tone was far less speculative. Gunnery Sergeant Jack Moretti stood before a group of high-ranking officials, arms crossed, his expression stone-cold. "They think we're a joke," one of the officials muttered, slamming a fist on the table. "They think we'll roll over for them. We're not sending a full fleet," the lead commander said, silencing the room. "This is a diplomatic operation. We're sending a small team to assess and negotiate. No unnecessary escalation." Moretti's eyes narrowed. "With all due respect, sir, if they're already mocking us, talking won't change much. They only respect power. And that's why you're going. Make them listen. But keep it clean, no overt aggression." Moretti didn't argue. Orders were orders. And truthfully, he didn't need overt aggression to make a point. When the human ship broke into the coalition fleet's airspace, the aliens barely reacted. They let the small, unassuming craft land without so much as a security scan. To them, it was the equivalent of a mouse wandering into a lion's den. The coalition commanders agreed to meet with the humans, their confidence unshaken. The coalition's council chamber was an intimidating space. Towering statues of alien heroes loomed over the circular room, their faces etched with expressions of victory and dominance. Moretti walked in, flanked by his small team of operatives, all wearing sleek, utilitarian armor. The aliens greeted them with thinly veiled amusement. "Ah, the humans," the coalition commander drawled, his voice dripping with disdain. "You come to beg for your colony's freedom? Or perhaps you're here to explain why your species belongs in the dust?" Moretti didn't flinch. His steps were measured, deliberate. He stopped a few feet from the center of the room and looked up at the commander, a slight smirk tugging at his lips. "Neither," he said simply. The aliens exchanged glances, some chuckling. The insected second-in-command stepped forward, his mandibles clicking. "Then why are you here, little human? To entertain us with your primitive posturing?" Moretti's smirk didn't waver. "I'm here to correct a misunderstanding. You see, you think we surrendered because we're weak. But that's not it. We surrendered because we follow rules, rules you clearly don't understand." The room quieted slightly, curiosity flickering through the gathered aliens. The coalition commander leaned back in his chair, motioning for Moretti to continue. "Rules of war," Moretti said, his voice calm but firm. On Earth, we have laws about what's allowed during a conflict. Things like targeting civilians, using chemical weapons, wiping out entire cities. That's what we call war crimes. The commander laughed, a deep, rumbling sound. And you think your rules make you superior? That they protect you? No, Moretti said, his tone hardening. They protect you. The laughter stopped. The shift in the room was palpable. Moretti took a step closer, his gaze sweeping the council chamber. Humans didn't create those rules because we're noble. We created them because, without them, we'd tear ourselves, and everything else, apart. You see, when we fight without rules, it's not war. It's annihilation. The council murmured, unease beginning to ripple through the ranks. Moretti didn't stop. You think we're harmless because we surrendered quickly. But surrender wasn't weakness, it was restraint. We know how to play the long game. And trust me, you don't want to see what happens when we stop playing by the rules. Silence filled the chamber. For the first time, the coalition commanders found themselves wondering if they'd made a mistake. Moretti didn't wait for them to process fully. He straightened his stance and gestured to his team. Your move, he said, his tone deceptively casual. Then he turned and left, leaving the weight of his words to sink in. As Moretti and his operatives exited the chamber, the coalition soldiers exchanged uneasy glances. The humans hadn't raised a weapon, but something about the Marines' words felt more threatening than any fleet or arsenal. Back on the flagship, the coalition commander watched the human craft lift off. For the first time, his confidence faltered. Keep an eye on them, he ordered, his voice unsteady. Humans, they may not be as simple as we thought. The council chamber buzzed with whispers long after Moretti's departure. For the first time, the Galactic Coalition found itself unsettled. The confidence they had when mocking humanity began to crack under the weight of the Marines' ominous words. Still, they dismissed it as bravado, until the data arrived. Coalition analysts pored over intercepted human records Moretti had deliberately leaked during his visit. What they found was a chilling collection of human history. It started with what the Coalition considered rudimentary weapons, arrows, swords, and fire, but quickly escalated into devastating technologies and tactics. The progression was horrifyingly rapid, with humanity perfecting each destructive method before moving to the next. The coalition leaders gathered in private to review the findings. At first, they laughed at the early images of primitive Earth warfare. A hologram displayed soldiers in archaic armor clashing with crude weapons. But then the images changed. Flashes of mushroom clouds lit the room, and the laughter died. Cities disintegrated into rubble. Entire populations vanished in an instant. The timeline moved forward, chemical agents blanketing the battlefield, reducing lungs to pulp. Biological weapons that didn't just kill but lingered, spreading terror long after the battles ended. This, began one of the commanders, his voice barely audible. This can't be real. These are exaggerations, surely. Exaggerations? Another retorted. The humans documented it themselves. They're proud of it. It was the psychological tactics that truly disturbed the coalition. They had encountered species that employed deception or intimidation before, but humans took it to another level. Entire campaigns were fought to break the enemy's will without ever engaging them directly. Propaganda, disinformation, and fear, these were weapons as devastating as their bombs. The coalition's second-in-command spoke up. They've evolved past this, haven't they? These war crimes are relics of their history, nothing more. A voice chimed in from a shadowed corner, low and grim. And if they haven't? The room fell silent, the implications sinking in. Meanwhile, rumors spread among the rank-and-file soldiers. Tales of Earth's atrocities grew with each retelling, taking on a life of their own. Some claimed humans had developed viruses that targeted specific species, wiping them out entirely. Others whispered about Earth's ability to harness the very fabric of space to obliterate planets. The truth no longer mattered, the fear was real. On the ground, alien soldiers occupying the colony began to notice something strange. The humans weren't panicked. They weren't begging or pleading. In fact, they seemed eerily calm. Every glance from the colonists felt heavy, as if they were biding their time. This shift unnerved the soldiers, who had grown used to the groveling and fear they usually inspired. The coalition commander decided to confront the issue head-on, calling for another meeting with Moretti. This time, his tone was less mocking. When Moretti's ship docked, the Marine stepped out, his posture as relaxed as ever. He walked into the chamber alone, his confidence almost unbearable for the alien leaders to watch. "We've reviewed your history," the commander began, choosing his words carefully. "It's, impressive. But surely your people have evolved past such barbarism?" Moretti tilted his head, a small, knowing smile playing on his lips. "Evolved? Sure. We've got rules now, like I said. But if you're asking if we've forgotten how to break them? Not even close." The commander leaned forward, his tone hardening. "Are you threatening us, human?" Moretti shrugged. "Depends. Are you smart enough to understand a warning?" The room tensed. Moretti reached into his pocket and retrieved a small device. With a press of a button, holograms filled the air, graphic depictions of Earth's darkest wars. He didn't narrate. He didn't need to. Each image spoke louder than words. Trenches filled with soldiers choking on mustard gas. Civilians vaporized by nuclear fire. Entire cities reduced to uninhabitable wastelands. Moretti let the silence linger, watching the aliens' reactions. Eyes widened. Mandibles clicked nervously. Scales rippled with unease. "We don't fight like this anymore," Moretti finally said, his voice low and steady. "Because we don't have to. We've learned restraint. But don't mistake that for weakness." The commander tried to compose himself. "And if we do? What then, Marine?" Moretti's smirk returned, sharper this time. "Then you'll find out why we made those rules in the first place." He leaned forward, his tone dropping to a near growl. "Humans don't just fight wars. We end them. And if you push us far enough, we'll remind you exactly how." The meeting ended abruptly. Moretti walked out without waiting for a dismissal, leaving the coalition leaders to grapple with the weight of his words. Back on their ships, the soldiers whispered in hushed tones, their confidence eroding with each passing hour. The humans had played their hand carefully, no violence, no aggression, just an unsettling reminder of what they were capable of. For the first time in centuries, the Galactic Coalition felt something they thought they had evolved past: fear. The Coalition fleet tightened its grip around the human colony, their unease growing with each passing day. The humans hadn't retaliated, yet the stories swirling through the ranks about Earth's past left a lingering sense of dread. The soldiers began second-guessing their orders, eyes darting nervously at shadows, as if the humans were planning something just out of sight. Among the coalition leadership, the unease had grown into desperation. The Marines' words had shaken them, but they weren't willing to relinquish their prize without a show of strength. Losing face now could fracture their entire alliance. The coalition commander convened his advisors in secret, their voices tense and hushed. "This is psychological warfare," one argued. "The humans are bluffing. They wouldn't dare escalate." "Bluffing?" another retorted. "You've seen their records. If even half of that is true—" "It doesn't matter if it's true," the commander interrupted. "We cannot let them undermine our authority. We'll stage an ambush. Show them we are not afraid." The plan was straightforward: lure the human team into a false negotiation, then eliminate them quickly and decisively. With their leadership gone, the humans would have no choice but to abandon the colony. The coalition would retain control, and their dominance would remain unchallenged. But Moretti had anticipated this. The Marine wasn't just a soldier, he was a strategist, trained to think several moves ahead. The team intercepted coalition communications, decrypting the ambush plans long before the aliens could act. Instead of retreating, Moretti saw an opportunity. "Let them think they have the upper hand," he told his team, his voice calm and unwavering. "We'll make it their mistake." When the coalition forces moved to spring their trap, they found themselves walking into one instead. The humans had prepared meticulously, exploiting every weakness in the coalition's predictable strategies. The alien forces, accustomed to overwhelming firepower and straightforward tactics, were unprepared for the chaos that unfolded. It began with misinformation. Coalition soldiers received conflicting orders, their communications jammed with false directives. Units were redirected to non-existent threats, leaving key positions exposed. Panic spread as the soldiers realized they were being manipulated, but they had no idea how deep the deception ran. Then came the psychological strikes. Drones equipped with speakers broadcast unsettling sounds, screams, gunfire, and eerie silence, plunging the coalition forces into confusion. Holographic decoys lured soldiers into traps, where they were quickly subdued by non-lethal means. The humans didn't kill unnecessarily. They didn't need to. Fear and confusion did most of the work for them. Moretti led from the front, his presence a steadying force for his team. Every move was precise, every decision calculated. He exploited the coalition's arrogance, turning their own strategies against them. The aliens had assumed humans were primitive, bound by rules that would hinder their effectiveness. They couldn't have been more wrong. One by one, the coalition forces began to crumble. Entire squads surrendered without a fight, their morale shattered. Those who resisted found themselves outmaneuvered and outsmarted at every turn. The humans operated with an efficiency that was terrifying to behold, their unconventional methods leaving the alien forces reeling. The coalition commander watched in horror as his carefully laid plans unraveled. His troops were scattered, his ships compromised, and his authority slipping through his fingers. The humans had taken control of the situation without firing a single lethal shot. It was a humiliation unlike any the coalition had faced before. Moretti didn't gloat. He didn't need to. The outcome spoke for itself. Standing in the heart of the coalition's command center, he addressed the remaining leaders with a calm that was more unsettling than anger. "This could have gone differently," he said, his voice steady but firm. "We gave you a chance to end this peacefully. You chose to escalate." He gestured to the monitors displaying the battlefield. Coalition ships retreating. Soldiers surrendering. The human colony untouched. "Consider this your lesson," Moretti continued. "Humans fight smart, not fair. If you come at us again, you'd better be ready to deal with what happens when we stop holding back." The room was silent, the alien leaders too stunned to respond. Moretti gave them a moment to absorb the weight of their failure before turning to leave. Back on the colony, the human settlers watched in awe as the coalition forces withdrew. Their homes, their livelihoods, their very lives had been spared because a small team of Marines had refused to back down. For the first time since the invasion, hope returned. The coalition fleet limped away, their forces in disarray. Among the soldiers, fear of humanity had transformed into something deeper, respect, tinged with the lingering dread of what could have been. For the first time, they understood why humanity had been so restrained. And for the first time, they were grateful for it. The aftermath of the battle left a silence that echoed across the galaxy. Coalition forces retreated in disgrace, their ships limping back to their respective sectors. Reports of the human retaliation spread like wildfire among the galactic species. The official narrative was spun to save face, but the soldiers who had been there told a very different story. Rumors turned into legend. Humans, they whispered, didn't just fight to win, they fought to destroy the very foundation of their enemy's resolve. And the most unsettling part? They didn't need to kill to do it. The coalition soldiers spoke of confusion, humiliation, and an overwhelming sense that they'd been played like pawns on a chessboard. Back on Earth, the colony's survival became a global sensation. News networks celebrated the Marine unit's success, replaying the footage of coalition forces retreating under the weight of human ingenuity. The United Nations Space Corps released a formal statement, calling the event a victory for diplomacy, though everyone knew the truth. Diplomacy hadn't won the day. Strategy and fear had. For the colony, life returned to a semblance of normalcy, though the scars of occupation lingered. The settlers worked together to rebuild, their gratitude for the Marines evident in every word and gesture. Children who had once cowered behind their parents now looked at the stars with pride, knowing that their protectors had stood firm against impossible odds. In the halls of the Galactic Concord, however, the story was far from over. The Coalition faced scathing criticism from other member species. Their reckless actions had not only embarrassed them but also destabilized the balance of power in the galaxy. More concerning, however, was the sudden and undeniable realization that humanity was not the harmless newcomer they had once believed. An emergency session was called. Delegates from across the galaxy gathered in a sprawling chamber to address the human question. The debate was heated. Some argued that humanity needed to be contained, their potential for destruction too great a risk. Others, however, saw opportunity. Humans, they reasoned, were adaptable, resourceful, and fiercely loyal to their allies. Properly managed, they could be a valuable asset rather than a threat. The turning point came when the human ambassador, an experienced diplomat named Elena Rivera, addressed the assembly. Calm and composed, she acknowledged the events on the colony and the fears they had sparked. Yes, humanity has a history of conflict, Rivera admitted. But that history is also one of growth, resilience, and innovation. We don't seek war. We seek peace. But make no mistake, if you threaten what is ours, we will defend it with everything we have. Her words hung in the air, a delicate balance between reassurance and warning. The Concord delegates exchanged glances, their calculations shifting. Rivera continued, her voice steady. We joined this galactic community to learn, to share, and to build a future together. What happened on that colony wasn't our choice. It was yours. Let's ensure it never happens again. The session ended without a clear resolution, but the tone had shifted. The galaxy now viewed humanity not as a minor player but as a power to be respected, and when necessary, feared. For Moretti and his team, the victory was bittersweet. They returned to Earth quietly, without fanfare, knowing their mission had been successful but aware of the weight it carried. Humanity's reputation had changed, and with it came new challenges. The galaxy would no longer underestimate Earth, but it would also watch more closely. As Moretti stood on a quiet balcony overlooking the colony he had helped save, he reflected on the cost of their success. The Coalition would think twice before targeting humanity again, but peace was always temporary. He knew this was only the beginning. His communicator buzzed, a message from Rivera. Simple, to the point. Mission accomplished. The galaxy knows what we're capable of. Let's make sure we never have to prove it again. He smirked, pocketing the device. The stars stretched endlessly above him, silent witnesses to the events that had unfolded. Humanity had taken its first steps into a larger, more dangerous galaxy. And it had done so not with brute force, but with the calculated brilliance that defined its spirit. The Coalition would remember this day for generations. Not because of the battles fought or the strategies employed, but because of the message it sent. Humans were not to be underestimated. Not now. Not ever.